More female officers will be trained to man the front desks of police stations to deal with victims of gender-based violence. He also says the police have now been instructed to revisit similar cases that were previously withdrawn and will also improve the service provided to victims of gender-based crime. Now, he was speaking at the funeral of slain UCT student Uyinene Mpiwa Mangirwa Tsanga is the regional campaign and advocacy specialist at Sonka Gender Justice. We chat to her now via Skype for some reaction. Good afternoon, Mpiwa. Thank you for your time on the SABC News Desk.
Afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Mpiwa, I just want to garner first your reaction to what's happening now. And do you at all feel encouraged with what the police minister had to say today, especially on that point of resensitizing and retraining police officers, because police stations are very much on the social front line of this problem, if you want to call it that, because they are that vital link between victims who have the courage to go report these sorts of crimes and then the provision of services by police officers.
Yes, certainly. The police are on the front line of the social side and also the legal side, because when victims go and open cases, the police are the first people that they encounter or they interact with. So it is actually very crucial that the services that the police render are services that do not lead to secondary victimization of survivors and victims of gender-based violence. However, what I will say is what is important is to move beyond the rhetoric. So much has been said, so much has been promised, so much has been called for by women, by women's rights organizations, by civil society. And I think it's time to move from the rhetoric to say, yes, promises have been made, but we need the action. Women are tired of hearing the promises. Women are tired of hearing the promises and of living hoping that things are going to change. So I hope that, because the critical thing is to move beyond just saying the training of police personnel is going to be done. Police personnel have also, some trainings have been done before with police officers, and we have not yet seen much change from those trainings. So the issue is what is going to be done differently to ensure that we move beyond the promises, beyond the trainings, to actually translating into real change in the way that women are treated in police stations, in the environment within which women are expected to open their cases, because it is so difficult. Once I went to one police office, I was reporting my own different issue altogether, and we're all sitting in a queue, in a bench, and a police would come and say, next, what is your issue? Next, what is your issue? And in my head, I sat and I thought, amongst these women could be someone who's coming to report a rape or a gender-based violence case. How are they supposed to shout out when the police officer is just moving from one person to another and saying next, next, next? So I think there needs to be that sensitivity, and these issues need to be really taken serious, because we are tired as women in this country of always hearing promises, and while promises are being made, someone is dying.
Mpiwa, I hear you, and on that note of addressing these increasing levels of sensitivity, often we have rape survivors saying that they have to do battle with police, doctors, psychologists, even the courts to get the justice she actually deserves, and then to go on to protect the next woman or child. You work with the woman on the ground. How do you suggest that we address these increasing levels of insensitivity at this juncture in our country, Mpiwa?
I think the conversation, one of the ways to increase these levels of insensitivity is to keep the conversation going. The challenges that we have is often it takes one case that sort of shocks the nation for us to bring back the conversation around gender-based violence. And once the pressure subsides, it's like business as usual. But I think that this is a conversation that needs to be kept every day. Gender-based violence should be a normalized conversation in homes, in our society, in the media, in schools, to a point where people really get to realize that this is a serious scourge. And yes, those within the line of service, those who give services that are aimed at assisting survivors of gender-based violence, need to continue to be sensitized, need to continue to be trained on how you handle a victim of gender-based violence, on how you investigate a case of gender-based violence, on what the law requires and what the law stipulates, what the law requires. We need to ensure that the state needs to ensure that necessary resources are availed to make sure that the steps that are being processed, that are being promised, are implemented, and also to ensure that this is a conversation that goes beyond Uyinene, Karabo, Anin, or any one of the cases that once in a while shock the nation. Because while these are the ones that we know, there are so many others that we don't know. There are so many other cases that have not become public that we don't know about. But the point is, billboards need to be everywhere in this country that talk about, that speak about gender-based violence, that call on men to desist from committing these heinous acts against women, and what women can do and what men need to do. So I think it really needs to be something that is given the attention and the priority that it deserves.
Just before I let you go, Mpiwa, I want to hear from your campaigning and advocacy initiatives. Are more South African men coming forward for help than before?
I think what we are doing is, I wouldn't say more men are coming than before, but to say in what we are doing, we are beginning to see the men that we are working with acknowledge some of the toxic masculinities that perpetuate the crimes that they do. And we are beginning to see some of them committing to working towards ending gender-based violence. Also understanding that gender-based violence is rooted in social and in social cultural norms, in toxic masculinities, in harmful gender norms, things that also need to be worked on progressively. So while we look at those long-term interventions, we also seek to address with them short-term interventions in some of the ways that they can support their female counterparts or female members in their lives who have been abused.
Mpiwa Mangwira from Sonka Gender Justice, thank you for your time on the SABC News Desk. Well, it's a cold day in Johannesburg. Let's see what the weather is doing.